Welcome to the Toastmasters Experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters Experience. I'm delighted to have Vicki today on this upcoming episode. Vicki, welcome to the Toastmasters Experience.
Thank you, Evelyn.
So good to have you here with me. Now, I'm just always start at the beginning. What motivated you to join Toastmasters? What clubs are you currently in? And how long have you been a Toastmaster?
All right, well, let's start with the shortest answer first, which is I've been a Toastmaster since 2015, so that's about 9 years. And the clubs that I belong to Parramatta Club for all of those 9 years. And in the last 2 or 3 years, I've joined Stage Time, and I've also been another member of Corrective Services Toastmasters Club as well. Mm-hmm. Now, why did I start? Well, there was an actual event that caused me to be involved with Toastmasters, and I owe it to my former boss. I'm a high school teacher, and she was very big on public speaking, and she used to give us lots of opportunities to speak publicly, whether at assemblies or in front of other teachers, various opportunities. And she used to talk a lot about the value of being able to speak well in public. And one day, so I can keep going. It's a little bit of a lengthy story.
No,
but
go ahead.
Quite interesting. One day she said to me and to all of the staff, she said, I'm going to give anyone who would like the opportunity to have their public speaking style analysed. Just come and let me know, and I'll bring someone in, a contact I have, and they will help you work sort of one-to-one on your public speaking. And I thought that's a very generous idea. Mm-hmm. At that stage, I was in charge of a group of students. I was what they call a year coordinator. So very regularly, I had to give assembly meetings and year meetings to about 150 students. So I got the person in. There was only, I think, 2 of the staff members that took up this offer. And I videoed one of the assemblies that I ran, and I sent it off to this person, and he came and met with me at my workplace and just discussed, gave me feedback, what the pros and cons of my speaking style was. And at the very end of it, he said, you would really benefit from joining a Toastmasters club. He said, I'm a member of a Toastmasters club, and if you want to join a club, you usually do a Speechcraft course, and you would benefit greatly from that. And the best Speechcraft course is run by a club in Parramatta. And I thought, oh, how convenient. I live quite close to that area. So I signed up, and that's how I began.
Wow. And was it what you expected?
It was what I expected. I thought it was, I'd heard of Toastmasters before, but I'd never done anything about joining it. And when I joined the Speechcraft course, I remember thinking that a lot of the speakers were excellent, mm-hmm. but I also remember thinking that a lot of the speakers were just like me, mm-hmm. Not floundering, but just I suppose practicing their craft and getting better at it. Mm-hmm. And then I went to a club meeting and saw a greater variety of speakers and very good speakers. And I remember at that club meeting going, oh, wow, I want to speak like these people. So that was sort of the thought processes that went through it.
Being a school teacher, is that part of your ongoing professional development? Do they have teachers work on their public speaking, or is it something that most teachers just naturally think, oh, well, I speak for my job, I don't need to get better?
Yes, look, a little bit of both. I think the last point you said, whereas most teachers think I speak for my job, so therefore, I don't mm-hmm. really need to hone the craft. And I must admit, I was a little bit like that because my icebreaker speech was called I Speak All Day for a Living.
Right.
So I did have that concept in my mind that I do a lot of speaking. I thought I needed to get better, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get better because I didn't want to get better at my classroom presentation. That's a different style of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be more on the stage giving speeches to people and engaging audiences. And I suppose I also thought, I mean, one of the motivating factors was at the end of 2015 when I joined up. I actually had to give a graduation speech for the graduating class of Year 12. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
I was the year coordinator for 6 years. So that was a motivating factor that I was going to be giving a public speech to, more than 350, 400 people. It had to be inspiring, like one of those sort of graduation speeches from
Mm-hmm.
universities that you see on YouTube all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was the motivating factor, and that was what I wanted to be good at. I wanted to be good at those inspirational, motivating speeches.
And how did that graduation speech go?
I think it went very well because I remember two parents came up afterwards and said, "Can I have a copy of your speech? I love that." So I thought that's probably a good indication.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, I also know that you occasionally compete in competitions. When was your first competition?
My first competition was in the first year that I joined
Oh,
in,
okay.
in 2015 at the end. So I joined in the July and I went in the international speech contest in the December. I didn't win at club level. It's very interesting because the topic of my speech that many years ago, almost 10 years ago, was the same story that I won at stage time and came second at district with just last year. So,
Wow. Yeah.
9 years later, it had been massaged and moved around and totally different message and that type of thing. So it's good to see the development of the speeches come along and that you can take an idea and move it into lots of different areas of inspiration, persuasion, or, entertainment.
And what do you like about competing?
I like the adrenaline rush of being able to push yourself. I prefer in terms of competing, I prefer to compete in the prepared speeches because I like to be prepared. Some people I think like the impromptu table topics and evaluation because they can just sort of think on their feet and I don't mind those, but I feel much better within myself going into a contest, being prepared and knowing exactly what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it and when I'm going to say it.
I enjoyed that you just said your very first speech competition
Mm.
was a speech you gave 9 years ago, and that's the one that you won at, or you got second place at district just
Yes.
last year. So, did it keep changing with every speech that you gave?
Oh, yes, yes. The message changed considerably. One
Mm,
of the aspects of public speaking that I really enjoy is the storytelling, is recounting stories from my childhood, my past, things I've experienced, and then weaving them into a speech of some sort. I and my brother, who I have quite a creative family. My three brothers are all involved in the arts, either in the making movies, drawing. One's an artist and an illustrator, and one is actually an actor and a stand-up comedian. And the one that's a comedian and actor, he said to me many, many years ago, "I'm not surprised you're a teacher." He said, "You've always been a great storyteller."
hmm.
And even though I loved telling stories and recounting, incidents and events and that from past, and I never considered myself a storyteller, but now that's what I love about the whole process of public speaking is to stand up and weave a story and then create it into some kind of message. I find the message the most difficult because I just like telling a good story and I often don't want to put a message to it. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
let that be organic and people think about the message too, but that's Toastmasters is about.
And do you like weaving in personal stories, or are there just stories about your life? Like, is there always a personal element to your stories?
Most of the time there is a personal element, yes. I'm not an exceptionally creative person, so I find it difficult to the stories that I tell, I wouldn't be able to make them up. There are things that have happened to me and or happened to my friends and family or that I've
Hmm.
been involved with. So I am better at telling a story that is personal, something that has happened to me. And, by the time you get to this end of your last third of your life, you've had a lot of things that have happened to you. So, and I'm very grateful that I've had parents and family situations that have promoted creativity and promoted risk taking and promoted some adventures for whatever reason. And so I've got a few stories to tell.
Oh, that's great. I love that. I love that. Now, I know also that you've done a moth speech. And
Yes,
was it the same speech that you actually ended up winning at district or second place at district?
it was the same story. Yes.
And for the listeners out there who might not know what moth is about, can you just explain what that is?
Yes, the Moth is a storytelling event, and I heard about it through a podcast, This American Life, that I was listening to, and they talked about the Moth stories. And it's a group of people or an organization that just puts on an event and has everybody come to this. It's like an open mic. And if you want to tell a 5-minute story, you can put your name in the hat and they draw people out and call you up on stage and you spend 5 minutes just telling your story. So there doesn't have to be, I don't think there's any structure, or they just ding you off at 5 minutes and double ding you off at 7 minutes if you're taking too long.
Hmm.
So I went along to one of these events and just loved the idea of, again, storytelling, just standing up and telling your story.
Hmm.
And I had a few stories in the back of my mind of things that had crazy things that had happened to me along the way. And so I got up and told a story about how I went hunting for my family's castle in Ireland
Hmm.
when I pre-internet in the mid 1980s, and ended up in Northern Ireland, not quite knowing how I got there, and all sort of the rest is history. I managed to find, because of the map of a tea towel I found in a pub, we found our family castle in Ireland. So I told that story, and I was the winner on the night, and then the winner from each month went on to do the final, which was held in a theatre in Sydney. And that's when I told the story from my winning speech about my mother's dance school. But the Moth closed down in COVID, and it hasn't
Mm.
reignited again in Sydney. So I keep looking for it, but that aspect of storytelling I really enjoy.
As far as the storytelling goes, comparing it to a Toastmasters speech, what are the differences?
The differences, I think, is that a Toastmasters speech, I think, is more educational, or it's desirable to have a message, to have a call to action, to have a dedicated series of things that you need to think about when listening to my story. It can't be a story that is just a story for a story's sake. It
Hmm.
has to have a purpose to it. And sometimes I find the injecting of a purpose into the story not the easiest thing.
Hmm.
That's the aspect that I have to work on. I just have the good story or an interesting story, and that's why I think over the course of the 9 years I've been in, I've used the same story but with a different message because
Okay.
I've manipulated it around.
This obviously was important for you to get this story out that you ended up getting second. I keep saying that you won because I feel like you did win. I think anyone who gets on the district stage has won, and you're a winner. So, but
Thank you, Evelyn.
it obviously was a message that you really wanted to get out there, or a story you wanted to get out there. Is that it? Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. I think it was a story about it'll probably make more sense if I told
Yes.
your
Yeah.
listeners the
Hmm.
story. But it's a story about my mother who ran a dance school in the early 1970s. I was only a little girl. But I remember the event, and it's interesting that there's no photographic memory of or evidence of this. But we had two disabled men that turned up to the dance school, and they wanted to have lessons, and my mother let them have lessons with, they were about in their 40s. And when you think about the incidence of a 40 year old man joining a child's dance class, that wouldn't happen now. It just wouldn't be allowed. And mum let them join in the class, and she didn't take any money off them, and she taught them dancing, and she made them a costume, and she put them in the concert, which was still bizarre as well. And I remember thinking as a young child, I don't want to be dancing in a concert with an old man.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the feeling of how much that opportunity affected him. It was, this is way before any disability provisions and equal opportunity or anything like that. And yet, I don't know how much flack she got from it. I don't know how many people said what a stupid idea that was. But she was just kind to them, and she
Mm.
made the most enormous difference to that disabled man's life. And I
Yeah.
remember that feeling. I remember thinking, no one is telling you to be kind. No one, you just showed everyone what it meant to be kind to someone. And you just never know the effect that that has on someone's life. So
Mhm.
that's the message that I wanted to get off. We weren't taught how to be kind, but I observed it in my world,
Right,
and
right.
in my parents and all of that happened at the time.
I know that you do other things within
Mhm.
Toastmasters. What is probably one of your most proudest moments?
I suppose personally, I feel very proud when I do well in a contest, and not just for myself, but I also feel, because Toastmasters is a very helpful society, and I feel very good for the people who have helped me. I don't want to disappoint them by not getting there. So I feel good for myself and my helpers when I am successful. But I've also been involved in delivering sort of public speaking education in the Toastmasters way to inmates in a prison, and
Mm.
that is extremely satisfying. I think it's always good to help. In Toastmasters, we all help each other, and I love doing that. But this is the next level of help where I really feel like I'm bringing some skills that are going to be valuable to these people. Yeah, I'm very proud of being involved in that program.
What made you decide to be a part of this program? Was it someone in a club that said, "Hey, Vicki, we know you're a teacher"? Did they actually search for you, or was it someone you knew, or how did that actually all come together?
Well, it wasn't, people didn't search me out for this. So this is a classic example of just being in the right place at the right time and saying yes. And one of the ladies in our club at Parramatta had been approached by Corrective Services to
Mhm.
deliver a Toastmasters program in a jail.
Mhm.
And she was just talking about it with some other people, and I happened to join that conversation. And when she said, "Oh, yes, I'm thinking we're going to go up, in the next couple of weeks," before I knew it, out of my mouth blurted, "Oh, I'd like to be involved in that." And,
Okay.
and so nobody else seemed to be saying that. So I guess that's why she took me up on it, and said, "Yes, let's do it." So I remember going home to my family and saying, "This is what I want to do." And my husband was fine. My grown-up sons were a little bit hesitant, maybe rightly so, but I have faith in the Australian systems and government and that, and I really didn't think that anything was going to be. In fact, I wasn't worried about my safety. I was more worried that I wouldn't have the right skills to teach adults in this situation. It's one thing to teach
Yeah.
teenagers. You speak to them in a certain way, and yet I didn't know the background of all of this. So I was going in a little bit blind and feeling a little bit incompetent about it all, but still willing to learn and willing to give it a shot. So
And how did it go? How did that first experience go when you first walked into that jail and started helping the inmates out? How did that go?
well, look, I remember how I felt as being nervous. However, they were some of the most respectful, thankful, grateful people that I've come across in my whole life. So that by the end of the 2 days, just just seeing how much we had affected their life and how vulnerable they were in learning a skill and standing up in front of us and speaking and often talking about their life. And in my eyes, I just thought, you know, I we have it so easy. You're the ones that are really doing the hard yards and trying to better yourself. And I just had complete admiration for them, really. There's one comment from one of the inmates that happened very early on. We've been doing this for almost a little bit over 5 years, and we would go out there every couple of months and deliver a Speechcraft course to a different group of inmates. But the ones that were very dedicated and wanted to learn more and started up their own club would come along eventually as helpers with us. And I remember this one particular person, and he was very nervous all the time, and we gave him the opportunity to actually deliver a little bit of an educational to his fellow inmates as part of the Speechcraft course. And he came up to me early on in the day and he said, "This is my notes I've written. Is this okay?" And I said, "Yeah, that's really good. What you've written is fine. You'll deliver it right." And he came back again and said, "Where do you think I should stand?" Just asking some more advice. And we talked about his delivery, what he was going to do and how long it was going to take and a few other things. And then he went away and he came back almost immediately and he said, "I just want to tell you, doing this Toastmasters and Speechcraft is the only time I feel like a real person
Yeah.
while I'm in jail." And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, that's so lovely. And
Yeah, yeah, no, that is lovely. Being a part of this program has been something that surprised you about Toastmasters or been really heartwarming. But has there been something, being a member of Toastmasters, that has sort of surprised you?
sort of surprised. Look, I don't think it surprised me, but like any volunteer organisation, there is a big demand on people to do things for free, for freedom. And there's also another aspect where, especially the leadership aspect of Toastmasters, where I think it attracts people who want to be leaders, but sometimes people who want to be leaders, but they can't be leaders in any other area of their life, and so see it as a chance to just control and be in charge of something. And it's hard to weed out those people, or it's hard to, and I think Toastmasters does a really good job of having a very standardized, strict protocol procedure of how things are done. But I suppose I was a little bit surprised that sometimes you had personalities that were very controlling and wanted things to be done with a certain aspect. And it's hard, it's hard for people to come from all different walks of life and be part of a group and get on together. But I
Hmm.
think Toastmasters does a really good job of providing a scaffold and a structure for that to happen.
Hmm.
Every now and then you get people that think, oh, really, maybe this is not for you.
In any organization, there's just so many different types of
Mm.
personalities that you have to work with. Are there any other sort of resources or books or that help you with your public speaking? So you've done the moth, which is of course has
Yeah.
stopped, but is there anything else? Maybe any like an interesting book that you've learned a lot, or a podcast?
I listen to TED Talks all the time. I
Yep.
find
Hmm.
them extremely interesting. So I think that's a great resource to not only pick up sort of ideas that you might be able to, change or move around into some way to help you, but just to see the different ways that people do present. I think being in a club where you might see the same people talking at
Hmm.
each meeting, it's good to get onto some other resources and see other people speaking in a totally different environment. I think that can help you learn.
Hmm.
I have done some lessons in speech and drama, which is a course that we run at our school, so that girls do, just like they would learn a musical instrument, they can learn speech and drama. I mean, those skills in drama and speaking have been extremely helpful as well. Both of those have been very good.
When you look at your personal and your professional life, how has Toastmasters helped you?
In my personal life, I think it's given me a great interest and a great a sort of project to do outside of my work and family. So that has been really quite lovely to have all of these things, especially as you get to the stage of life I am, whereas all my children are grown up and gone, and you find you have a lot more time on your hands to be able to. So I'm glad that I've established myself in a club that has given me a lot of opportunities to do things.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely can say in my professional life, I use the skills all the time because I'm now involved in presenting to a lot of teachers and to whole school events. I run, delivery of professional development. It is absolutely certain that the skills I've learned in Toastmasters have helped me. I know this, I feel it myself, but I also have had colleagues say to me, "Oh, you're very good at presenting. You're very good at presenting." And so that is reinforcing the fact that what I've learned through Toastmasters has definitely assisted me to improve those skills.
What year do you actually teach, or what is the role that you do at your school?
At my school, I'm high school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
so 7 to 12, but I'm in a middle management role where I actually look after the teachers' education. So I manage them through accreditation levels, and early career teachers, I mentor them and instruct them and just help them along the way to being a better teacher. So that's the administrative type role that I do in the schools. I still do teach 2 classes, and I'm mainly seniors, so mainly years 11 and 12 I teach.
And just out of curiosity, have you noticed in how the younger people communicate? Like, how has texting, social media, has that affected communication?
I think it has. I definitely think it has. I think I think young people don't necessarily see the value in being able to speak well. I mean, I work in a school that does value a lot of those things. So I do see the opportunities that are given to young people to improve their public speaking skills, and lots of other areas that go with that. We have at our school a little bit of a mantra, or that you do need to be able to speak well, and that just being able to text and to do everything on computer, everyone can do that. So if you want to stand out, or if you want to be a point of difference, being able to look someone in the eye and speak well is probably going to be it in the future years. So that's a little bit of a message that my place of work is giving to young students. But when I sort of look at the broader aspect of young people, I think the valuable art of communication, even just one-to-one, is being lost a little bit. The texting and the emails and all of that, it's very, very hard to send tone and message and underlying influences and all of that. Like, it's very especially when we know that as Toastmasters and speakers, a lot of our communication is conveyed through our body language and our gestures, and that's what human beings are very visual. So I think they pick up on that complexity of communication when people are speaking. And speaking is like public speaking, and any form of speaking is just like going to the gym. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So I think it's going to be a decline in public speaking skills the less that people do actually speak.
Yeah, that's right. And there's also the tone and the resonance of the voice and the volume and just so much more than just emailing and texting. But yeah, so you're absolutely right. Vicki, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you today, but I do want to ask you one last question. What advice would you give someone considering joining Toastmasters?
The advice I would give would be not to expect to become a great speaker or even a good speaker in a short amount of time. Like what I said before about gym, if you want to develop your muscles and have a bodybuilding body, you can go to the gym for 18 months, but as soon as you stop going, it's going to, go back to flab. So it's the same with your speaking skills. I think make a commitment, and even if you have big breaks every now and then, or you might only go once a month, it's consistency in developing a skill that results in success.
Thanks again, Vicki, for being on today's episode.
Oh, thank you very much, Evelyn. It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.